Welcome to Spark Talk, an at ibapa.com podcast where curiosity meets conversation and ideas ignite. We're a show produced through the magic of AI, guided by extensive online research, bringing you insights, thoughtful perspectives, and stories that connect and inspire. In each episode, we'll explore intriguing topics sifted and synthesized from the vast universe of human knowledge available online, because sometimes the best conversations start with a single spark. You're listening to Spark Talk. Let's get started. The pen versus the sword, it's a debate that shaped an entire nation. When we look at José Rizal and Emilio Aguinaldo's approaches to Philippine independence, we're really examining two radically different paths that continue to influence how social movements operate today.
You know what fascinates me about this? How these two figures, coming from such different worlds, managed to shake the foundations of Spanish colonial rule in their own unique ways.
Let's break this down. Rizal, the intellectual from the Ilustrado class, wielded words as his weapon. His novels weren't just literature, they were calculated strikes against colonial oppression. The Spanish authorities were so threatened they banned his books and eventually executed him.
Pero hindi ba interesting na his death in 1896 actually sparked the very thing he tried to avoid, a violent revolution?
That's exactly right. And here's where it gets fascinating. Rizal's execution at age 35 became this catalyst that energized the revolutionary movement, which Aguinaldo, then just 29, would eventually lead.
Speaking of Aguinaldo, let's talk about how different his approach was. While Rizal was writing in Europe, si Aguinaldo was organizing resistance on the ground in Cavite.
The contrast is striking. Aguinaldo achieved something tangible, the declaration of Philippine independence on June 12, 1898, and the establishment of the First Philippine Republic. But his legacy is complicated by some controversial decisions.
You mean the deaths of Bonifacio and Luna? That's really the dark chapter that people still debate about today.
Exactly. The execution of Andres Bonifacio in 1897 and Antonio Luna's assassination in 1899 raised serious questions about leadership during revolutionary periods. Some historians argue these actions were politically necessary, while others see them as power grabs that weakened the revolution.
That's such a complex issue. You know what makes this even more interesting? How the American colonial period shape how we remember these two figures.
The American influence is crucial to understanding this whole narrative. They deliberately promoted Rizal as the ideal national hero while downplaying revolutionary figures like Aguinaldo. It was a calculated move to discourage armed resistance against their own colonial rule.
Makadiyan. And it worked! Look how our education system still largely follows that American influence interpretation.
Well, think about the class dynamics at play here. Rizal's elite background gave him access to European liberal ideas, but it also separated him from the daily struggles of ordinary Filipinos. Meanwhile, Aguinaldo's more modest origins connected him directly with the masses.
That reminds me, both of them were actually quite young when they made their mark. How does that compare to today's youth movements?
That's such an interesting parallel. Today's young activists often combine both approaches, using social media and art for awareness, like Rizal, while also engaging in direct action, like Aguinaldo. They're creating this hybrid model of resistance.
And looking at modern Filipino society, don't you think we're still dealing with many of the same issues they fought against?
Absolutely. Foreign influence, social inequality, the need for educational reform. These challenges persist, just in different forms. What's changed is how we approach these problems.
So what do you think is the most important lesson we can learn from comparing these two historical figures?
I think it's that social change rarely comes through a single approach. Rizal's cultural awakening through education and literature laid the groundwork for Aguinaldo's revolutionary actions. They weren't really opposing forces, they were complementary strategies.
That's really powerful when you think about it. Hindi naman kailangan pumili between being a Rizal or an Aguinaldo.
Exactly. Modern movements for social justice often succeed when they combine different approaches: intellectual and grassroots, peaceful and confrontational. It's about finding the right balance for the moment.
And maybe that's the real legacy of both Rizal and Aguinaldo, showing us that transformation requires multiple paths forward.
Looking ahead, I think their stories remind us that the journey to progress is never simple. It requires both the pen and the sword, the intellectual and the revolutionary working in concert toward a common goal.
Tama. At sa huli, ang importante ay kung paano natin gagamitin ang kanilang mga aral sa ating kasalukuyang mga hamon.
Well said. That's our show for today. Thanks for listening to Spark Talk, an at ibapa.com podcast where every episode is thoughtfully crafted through the lens of AI informed by the vast digital landscape of knowledge. Be sure to subscribe and share and join us next time as we continue exploring the sparks that ignite curiosity. Until then, stay curious, stay connected, stay informed.